Well, a very good day to you. I hope you're doing well on this Maundy Thursday. My name is Joseph Humphreys. I'm the lead pastor of our Grovetown campus, and I am here coming to you from my backyard. And all over the English-speaking world, everywhere else, this is not called a backyard. This is called a back garden. And so as we pick up the story in the life of Jesus during the Holy Week, what we find is that as I come to you from my back garden, we pick up the story with Jesus in another garden, the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, this garden was an important place to Jesus. It was a place that he would often go to escape the crowds of Jerusalem. It was a place of rest. It was a place of restoration. But tonight, as he entered into this garden again, what I want you to see is that it was absolutely none of those things. You see, Jesus was just on the cusp of his passion. What we understand is that as Jesus enters this garden, not only is he leaving his friends behind, having had the very last meal with this group of men that he shared nearly every meal with for the past few years, but what we understand is that as he's walking into this garden, one of his friends is betraying him, and it is setting him up to face one of the most heinous vehicles for torture and death in the history of mankind, the Roman cross. And so as Jesus enters this garden, what you can understand is that he is carrying an incredibly heavy weight, an incredibly heavy burden. Can you feel the agony in this moment? Can you feel the sense of dread, that twisting, gnawing in his stomach as he understands what is coming, the loss of his friends, the betrayal and the sting of that from Judas, and now he faces the cross. But more than all of those things, what we understand is that as Jesus is entering this garden, he is going to be facing the very wrath of God, not just for one man, but the culmination of God's wrath for all of the sins of the world. Every person who has lived before, at present, and to come. Can you imagine what Jesus is going through? Well, today I want you to put yourself in Jesus' shoes, because what we're going to find in the garden is that Jesus walked this road in yours. What do I mean by that? Well, the Garden of Gethsemane shows us and demonstrates for us better than probably anywhere else in Scripture the humanity of Christ. What do I mean by that? Well, what we find in the Bible is that Jesus was both 100% God and he was 100% man. Colossians chapter 2 verse 9 tells us that in Jesus the whole fullness of deity dwelt bodily. So we can't entertain any notion that Jesus somehow ceased to be God as he was going through the events of his life. That just is in contradiction to the rest of Scripture. But what we do know is that Philippians chapter 2 tells us that God emptied himself to take on human form. So what does that mean? What does it mean that Jesus emptied himself? Well, while he retained the fullness of his deity, all of its attributes, what we understand is that he restrained some of them so that he could have an entirely human experience. What I'm saying is that Jesus walked this road to Calvary in the same way, feeling all of the same things that you and I would have been feeling. Jesus was 100% man. This is important for us. This is something that we need to understand in our Christian walk, and we see it come to bear in Matthew chapter 26, verse 39. It says, as Jesus has gone into this garden, the Garden of Gethsemane, he asks his disciples to keep watch. He's feeling weak. He's feeling vulnerable. He just wants them to keep an eye out. He knows that this impending doom is coming. And it says this, going on a little further, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." Man, these are confusing words from the Son of God. He's been so strong. He's been such a force in his life. And yet here we get a sense of his agony. We get a sense of the distress that he has to be feeling, this weight that he has on his shoulders. He cries out to God, if this cup can pass, if there's any other way, take it from me. What I want you to see is I want you to see the humanity of Jesus, because this can be an encouragement for you and for me. Because what we learn is that even in our fear, even in our distress, even in our questions, God is big enough to handle all of them. You see, Jesus didn't sin when he came to God the Father and placed this at his feet. It's not fear, it's not agony that makes us sinful. It's our reaction to it. And rather than running from God, rather than being angry with God, Jesus brings his fear, he brings his weakness, he brings his agony, and he places it at the feet of his Father. Listen, I don't know where you are today, but God is big enough for your questions. God is big enough for your fears. Don't run from him. Lay them at the feet of the Father. It's exactly what Jesus does as he feels the pressure, as he feels that gut-wrenching anxiety at the proposition of what he was about to go through. And we see that God is faithful to meet him in this moment. In Luke chapter 22, it tells us that God sends an angel to minister to Jesus. And as he does, and as Jesus continues to pray and spend time with God, we see that Jesus moves from being burdened to being emboldened. I want you to see this at the very end, after Jesus has wrestled and as he has prayed. It says, then he came to the disciples and he said to them, sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise and let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. What a transition. Jesus moves from being weak, from being in distress, from being burdened almost to the point of being crushed, to being this emboldened commander. Rise. Let's go meet our fate head on. How does Jesus do it? Well, what I want you to see is that in the humanity of Jesus, there's great hope. Because Jesus didn't take any shortcuts. Jesus navigated this gut-wrenching agony, his questions and his fears, in the same manner that is available to you and I through his death, burial, and resurrection. There's no magic formula. Jesus spent time with God. He laid his cares at the Father's feet, and in this communion, God was faithful to strengthen him, even to the point of death. You see, I want you to put yourself in Jesus' shoes, because I want you to know that Jesus walked in yours. Not just that he died the death that was owed you. That's true. He did that. But he did it with all of the tools that he made available to you and to me. And so wherever you are today, no matter what fears you face, questions that you may be thinking, what I want you to know is that you can have victory. You can overcome the trials and the tribulations of this life by the same power that Jesus did. The power that was made available to you and to me in his death, burial, and resurrection. I hope you're encouraged today. I hope that this meets you right where you are. Remember, we're going to be participating in the Lord's Supper. Prepare your house, prepare your heart. I can't wait to see you there. God bless you.